Optimism isn't sunshine and rainbows. It's fixing things, changing the way we fix things. It's running the world on smarter energy. Because if optimism never stops, then change can't either. GE Vernova, the energy of change.
It's Thursday, the 23rd of October. I'm in Caerphilly. This is the by-election day for the Senedd. It'll be the last by-election ahead of the big all-out elections next May. There's no doubt we fought a really big campaign, and from all the opinion polls, they say we're just a couple of points ahead. So the stakes today could not be higher.
Hello and welcome to Quiet Riot Sunday School, the weekend pot noodle to our midweek Michelin star feast. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I'm Alex.
And I'm Kenny. I'm on my way to London to go to a Naomi party. Looking forward to that in a few weeks' time, Alex. But because it's a party weekend, I want to treat myself. My birthday's that week as well. I'm on the lookout for some kind of unusual but fab places to eat, and you might be the very person to point me in the right direction. Any tips?
I don't know that I am. I don't like posh restaurants. They don't do it for me.
I'm okay. I don't like posh restaurants that much either.
Well, I'll tell you what. The joy of London is the variety. So when my family comes to visit, for instance, you have the little food village behind the Royal Festival Hall by the river. You have the fantastic Mercato Metropolitano just off Elephant and Castle, which is an indoor Italian food market. You have an indoor food market in Vauxhall. You have another one in Victoria. And
Borough
of course,
Market, do we even look in there?
Borough Market is great. I mean, everything is overpriced now and you have to know what you're doing. But if you like fresh oysters, for example, they're actually a steal at 12 quid for 6 massive ones.
I just have to find a pub where I can get a cold Guinness to go with those.
Yeah, so it's just, you just have to know what you're doing. The other day we went to Borough Market because my nephew was here and he wanted an ice lolly afterwards as we were walking towards the river. And so he stopped at it was a normal ice cream truck that just happened to be parked right outside Borough Market, right? There was nothing special about this ice cream. It was normal commercial ice cream. And he bought an orange ice lolly, like a orange squash ice lolly, like the totally standard ones.
Yeah.
And it was £4.50. So you just have to be judicious. But for me, eating with other people always involves some sort of compromise. You want something slightly different to what they do, and you end up compromising. But if you go to something like a big indoor food market, you all get to eat exactly the thing you want. And to me, that's a profound joy. I'll have oysters, which I know you'll hate, and you can have those potatoes with the raclette cheese melted on top, which I know you love, and you can have a paella, and you can have, they do a fantastic duck sandwich at Borough Market, and everyone is completely happy and has had exactly the thing they wanted.
Do you know what the very best thing about that is for me, Alex? And this is going to wind up a lot of our listeners. I don't doubt it for a second.
That you hate cheese.
Well, do you know, the cheese thing can go to one side for this one. There's many things that wind me up in life. Cheese is one of them. But the other thing that winds me up is when I go to a restaurant, a Chinese or an Indian, and everybody wants to share everybody else's flipping meals. And there's always my meal that people like the taste of best, because I have an inbuilt ability to choose the best damn thing on a curry house menu, which means I get the least amount of the damn curry that I've ordered, because everybody else is going, oh, that's quite nice. Can I just have another forkful? No, piss off. I'm stabbing you with my fork.
On that, there is an indoor curry hall just off Brick Lane. Also,
I know that
with
one.
loads and loads of street food and pakoras and things like that. So for me, that's where I would gravitate towards. Now, if you want something slightly posher and sit down because it's your birthday, I will send you some recommendations privately, because this is a podcast, and if businesses want us to promote them, they can bloody well pay for it.
Which takes us quite neatly onto our regular beg for cash, doesn't it?
That is true. I hadn't thought of that.
That's a Radio 4 segue there, listeners.
Yeah, so here comes a regular reminder that we work hard to keep Quiet Riot completely free, be that our main episode, the Sunday schools, or the specials that come in between. That's a lot of output. And if you feel able to give us even a little bit of support, to pay the bills, please pop over to ko-fi.com/QuietRiotPod. Supporters get access to our Discord channel, our exclusive live editorial meetings, and Ask Us Anything sessions, the next one of which will be announced next Sunday.
And a huge thank you to those fans of the show who've been chipping in. It's not just that it's helpful, it genuinely is quite humbling. On to today's offering then. Alex, I reckon I could guess what's on your political radar today.
Well, clearly it's a big deal to the people of Caerphilly in the wake of Plaid Cymru's historic victory. They really did the business for progressives everywhere. And Labour's new deputy leader has been announced. The first time a deputy leader has been elected separately from a leader for 4 decades.
Okay, and for a final bit, can we go off-piste a little and talk about celebrity traitors, please?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, I can hear it in your voice that you're as much of an obsessive as I am. And I'm willing to bet there's quite a few fans among our listeners too. And if you're not a fan, and if you're the sort of person like me who doesn't even like TV per se, this is a series that you really should get plugged into. It's fab.
Agreed. So I'll grab my green cloak and I'll meet you in the turret. Let's crack on.
Quiet Riot.
300 million years ago, what is now Caerphilly sat under a tropical sea, decorated with corals and populated with dinosaurs and other prehistoric knickknacks. That's when many of Wales's vast coal deposits started to form. Now, why is this significant? Well, in every election, pretty much since the Carboniferous period, Labour has utterly dominated Caerphilly politically. Towns stretching north from Cardiff via Caerphilly and Pontypridd to Merthyr Tydfil have been defined by 2 colours, the deep black of coal and the proud red of Labour. Well, no more. The black stuff itself was doomed from the moment Thatcher came to power, and the red stuff, well, it's been bleeding away gently since the highs of the Blair era. Gently, that is, until Thursday, when a century of Labour dominance in Caerphilly ended somewhat abruptly. Plaid Cymru took victory with a quite remarkable 47% of the vote. Reform came home second with a not too shabby 36%, and Labour, a pitiful 11% and a third place, which sent smoke signals all the way from the valleys to Westminster.
I give public notice that Lindsay Whittle is duly elected as the member of the Senate for Caerphilly constituency.
Ladies and gentlemen, you'll forgive me, I'm not used to speaking first in these election counts. Whilst we are perhaps euphoric in some parties tonight, I would respectfully ask that you all please remember the reason we have this by-election under very sad circumstances, and I am very proud, this is hard, to pay tribute to Heaven David and to his family and friends. I extend my still personal deepest sympathies. He will be a hard act to follow. I will never fill his shoes, but I promise you I will walk the same path that he did. I hope that this will be now an exciting time for politics in Wales. I've been absolutely heartened by the number of young people who've been involved in this campaign. People not interested in politics I've had selfies taken before. I've never had this. Listen now, Cardiff, and listen, Westminster. This is Caerphilly and Wales telling you we want a better deal for every corner of Wales.
There is change afoot, as significant in its own way as the change is forced on Wales by the closure of the pits, reflecting the need for a new direction and, inevitably, leaving some behind. In this case, Labour's somewhat unfortunate candidate, Richard Tunnicliffe, whose showing may well leave him as a rather embarrassing fossil in Wales's rich political history. Alex, let's not kid ourselves. We knew Labour were in trouble in Wales, but 11%. Do you think this is a cliff edge moment for Labour, who do know from their experiences in Scotland just how hard it is to fight back against the gravity of politics when you start to tumble like this?
It's a difficult one to unpack. So it's obviously a disaster for Labour. Basically, the Caerphilly election is where 2 trends met. And one trend is we hate Labour. We know that's around. And the second trend is for quite smart strategic tactical voting, increasingly over the last few elections. So it's absolutely true to say that in a constituency that had comfortably elected a Labour candidate since time immemorial, since, as you put it, the Carboniferous period. Although I'm not sure there were dinosaurs around, Kenny, I have to tell you.
I will need to bet Corbyn was mincing about at that stage.
If voters had been happy with the government, then their tactical voting choice was a very easy one, right? To defeat reform. So the reason they were looking for a different choice is because voters are not happy with Labour. But the magnitude of the migration of the vote over to Plaid would imply to me that there was also something tactical going on. So there were a lot of people that voted for Plaid Cymru because they wanted reform defeated. Certainly the non-existent size of the Liberal Democrat and Green vote would suggest that a lot of voters from those parties did the same thing. We don't know even how many Tories voted for Plaid Cymru. There are anecdotally Tories saying, I'm lending my vote to Plaid Cymru because I really don't want reform to get a foothold in Wales. The fact that Labour was not even ever really a realistic choice for the voters of Caerphilly defeating reform says volumes about how much trouble the government is in at the moment.
Yeah.
But the size of the switch, I would think, is so far away from national trends that it reflects quite a lot of tactical voting.
I think that's a very, very good point, actually. And anybody who thinks that tactical voting didn't play a part in this, having seen that Labour only recorded 11% of the vote, is...
Well, they only need to look at the turnout.
Yeah, well, and it was an over 50% turnout, wasn't it? Which is the highest turnout in goodness only knows how many years. It was an engaged electorate by the standards of by-elections. There's one other thing I would say on this point, though, that even though we understand that tactical voting is clearly playing a role here, one thing about voting is that there's a stickiness element in politics. And the question for me will be how many of those voters who either length the vote short term or decided they would try a different political colour, how many of them will stick with Plaid going into the elections next year in particular? Because stickiness is a thing, and we're close enough to the next elections in Wales for it to be habit forming for enough of the voters to make a genuine difference the next time they go to the ballot box.
Yeah, you're asking how much of this we can kind of project onto how much of this will stick, basically, for the Senate election coming.
What extrapolation can we do looking ahead to the Senate elections?
A lot. One of my really strong instincts before the election was that this was going to provide a kind of test case. Plaid Cymru has been signalled to all of Wales now as the party that is capable of beating reform and beating reform well. Now, some caveats. There's a different electoral system for the Senate election. It's a sort of D'Hondt list, proportional representation system. But who comes first matters. And so I think we will see some tactical voting, despite this being a proportional representation election. Certainly we will see the wholesale migration of voters unhappy with Labour. But I suspect the percentage for Labour will be a fraction higher, probably near to where they are in the national polls, a few percentage points higher. And I think we will see much less lending of votes from the Greens and the Lib Dems. If that Senate election was held today, I would expect it to be for Plaid, but by a much smaller percentage beating reform. This is only one data point, obviously problematic in trying to predict what happens. But I think with all the caveats, this was an important staging post, and Reform knew this was an important staging point. 6 weeks ago, Farage made his first appearance at Caerphilly, and he's been there, I think, a dozen times since, including on the day of the election, although he seems to have disappeared now. And he said that, and I quote, "We are throwing everything at this," and he expected to win Caerphilly. Those were his words. To demonstrate the extent to which I'm not fashioning an opinion to fit the result, I'd like to play what I've said ahead of the election would be the things to look out for. I really do think they're showing their inexperience here, because they're both quite boastful and arrogant about how well they're doing, and also taking on quite a lot of the features that they say were rotten about the establishment, about what had gone on before. And I think they're creating a situation for themselves where if they had managed that expectation well, that would look like a huge victory compared to the date of the previous election. Because they haven't managed expectations well, that might look like they're yesterday's men. So even though media seem to be ignoring their expectations of this election and where Reform are in the polls, I think it's also not great for Reform. It's easy to pretend Reform are a brand new party, right, with no presence in Wales, and point to the 2% they got in the last Senedd election, the last equivalent election. But, I could just as easily point to the 2019 European elections, where the Brexit Party came top in Wales with 33%.
Yeah.
And this was with the Conservatives still maintaining a more reasonable, I think 7 or 8% it was. So you can't pretend that Reform are anything other than the latest iteration of the Farage Party, which means that it is significant to look at the fact that they did have a presence,
Yes, I think that's
they
a very
much
fair
had a
point.
presence. At the last general election, Welsh Conservatives got 18% and Reform got 16%. 17% nearly, actually. That was in the last general election in 2024. And if you combine those two numbers, you get pretty close to where they are today. So what's happened, I think, is a consolidation of the vote on the right for Reform UK, on the left for the party that was most likely to win that seat, in this case, Plaid. And that might mean that it's not completely gloomy at Labour HQ today.
Quiet riot.
If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo.
Quiet riot.
Reform complicates matters because when the result came in on Thursday night, I was wondering to myself, look, is this something similar to the signals we were seeing immediately before the SNP hammered Labour in Scotland all those years ago? And the political gravity that I referenced at the beginning of the show really took over and wiped Labour out from a position of immense power north of the border. One thing that we can say about the Caerphilly result, I think, is that next year's Senedd election is now going to be what we might describe as a realignment election. It certainly isn't going to be a routine hold-the-line election for Labour. And I don't think it's difficult to say with some level of confidence that Labour is very likely to lose its dominant position in Wales. By how much remains to be seen. Certainly, it could even lose safe seats. Plaid is definitely very well placed to become the largest party, or if not, the key player. And I think that's an important point to make. In other words, Plaid is now in a place where it will have a role to play at the centre of government in Wales, a big role to play, whether or not it becomes the largest party or not.
Yeah.
And then, as you've alluded to, Reform are going to gain significant grounds. But the by-election figure, particularly given how much effort Farage and everybody else put into this, suggests that they may well fall short of outright dominance, unless they make further inroads. And that's before you factor in all the complications around people lending their votes one way or another.
And Nathan Gill, which is a story that is gaining actually in traction because it's now emerging that another two MEPs of that same party made very similar statements at the same time in the European Parliament. And so I think that story has legs.
Well, the last point I was going to make was, with Reform in mind, there is always the ever-present risk that they find a way of imploding. And there's a long way to go before the next Westminster elections, but there's quite a long time before we have to sit down and consider the Senedd elections, and they are not a stable organisation.
And they haven't selected a leader for Wales still. And I think the pressure is growing for them to do that before the election. I think not doing before the election will hurt them, and doing it before the election will hurt them, because a sort of Reform-shaped hole into which people can just project Nigel Farage, who is very popular, is going to be more attractive than an actual person that they select. And they know that.
Yeah.
But not selecting someone will hurt them at the Senate elections as well. So I think they will have to twist on this rather than stick. And when that happens, there will be problems with that person, as there are always.
I mean, zooming out, are there any lessons you think that we could take in terms of national politics and in terms of the next Westminster election?
Look, there are signals. I wouldn't go as far as to extrapolate national result in 4 years' time. I mean, that's just insane. John Curtis's analysis was actually talking out of his butt, if I may be so bold. I mean, I love the guy, as you know, but he has a blind spot when it comes to tactical voting. He doesn't see it before it happens and refuses to acknowledge it after it happens.
Well, you have to applaud his consistency.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, he's an old-fashioned person, and I think in many ways he has become, for me, a symbol, a cipher for the polling industry really struggling to cope with a multi-party environment. They're just not calling things right at all at the moment. Like, YouGov did an MRP. Fair enough, this was how would you vote at a Westminster election, okay, based on a huge sample. And they found that Caerphilly would go to reform, and easily, by like 8 points. And they thought Labour would get 22%, the Conservatives would get 8%, Lib Dems 6%, Plaid Cymru 24%, and Greens 6%. And I mean, there's not a single percentage in there that is even close to being right.
A monkey with a calculator could have done better than that.
Like I said, and I do know this is an extrapolation from data points to constituency level, that it's for Westminster voting.
Yeah.
But if I were sitting at YouGov headquarters, I would look at this result and look at what our prediction model showed and think to myself, there's something my model is not capturing. There's something it's not catching. And I think that something is tactical voting. I think with every passing election, people are becoming smarter about understanding the balance of gravity in their constituency and voting smartly to defeat the party they want to not have in power. And I think if I were to take one message away from this election, it is that Reform have a third of the vote in a lot of constituencies, but there are a lot of constituencies with a large progressive majority. If that progressive majority gets its act together, and sometimes this will be behind Plaid, sometimes it will be behind the Greens, and sometimes it will be behind the Lib Dems, and sometimes it might be behind your party, and sometimes it might be behind Labour. And I think it's really important for people to allow the emotional space in themselves, that it could be, once you see all the data of where we are in 2029, the smartest way to defeat Reform in their constituency is Labour. And that will be the case in a large number of constituencies, because Labour is not a party that will be wiped out in the space of 1 3-year period, I don't think. And so I think, to me, that's the message. To me, the message is that a third of the vote is not enough to get you elected if the other 2/3 of the vote get their act together.
So before we shut this topic down, one last question. Do you think it's healthier, in broad democratic terms, for devolved assemblies and parliaments to have different leadership to Westminster?
That's an interesting question. I think it is, actually. I think it is in the current environment. We have a lot of discord and division. I think everything being aligned behind one party risks a sort of all eggs in one basket syndrome.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, if you get annoyed with that party, then it sullies all devolved government everywhere. So I think it is useful and healthier to have a working relationship, but one that is happy to disagree with devolved governments. Also, I think looking ahead, because we are no longer talking about two parties dominating the political landscape, parties have to learn how to work with each other. And so fostering this kind of more collaborative relationship, both in terms of, let's say, the Senate might have to involve a coalition of several parties, but also the government in 10 Downing Street will have to work maybe with an assembly government that is led by Plaid. I think this will foster the right kinds of habits to start to learn what are their key asks, how to compromise, how to talk to each other, how to be less tribal. And I think that is a really useful skill set looking to the future.
That's something I agree with, actually. And from my time living in Wales and in Scotland, I think political scientists call it asymmetric accountability, the idea that power dispersed across governments that are each held to account locally rather than by one monolithic party. is of itself a good thing, because when the same party controls London and Edinburgh and Cardiff and Belfast, there's the risk that democracy can ossify almost, that you get groupthink dominating the world of politics, you get the inevitable centralisation, and the creeping suspicion also that devolution itself isn't anything more than a branding exercise, and that's corrosive in countries like Wales and Scotland. And there's that safety valve element as well, the idea that people are being listened to at one level of government at least. So yeah, I think a bit of political biodiversity does make the democratic ecosystem just a whole lot more resilient.
And I think, different parties have different cultures as well. And that's okay too. And I think, a party like Plaid potentially being given the chance to govern in Wales might reveal a different way of doing things. That might be a good way of doing things. There is a little bit too much of the way I do things is the only way to do things going on at the moment. And I think the more we are exposed to different models of governance, the better it will be for deciding what model works.
Quiet riot. Rain-X wipers are the #1 wiper blades in America. That means all kinds of drivers choose Rain-X. Big drivers in small cars choose Rain-X. Small drivers in big cars choose Rain-X. Drivers with long hair and short commutes choose Rain-X. Drivers with short hair and long commutes choose Rain-X. Drivers with pets on board, babies on board, and bored babies on board choose Rain-X. Basically, drivers who love a clear view of the road all choose Rain-X wipers, the #1 wiper blades in America. Quiet riot.
I scraped to victory by a hair of my eyebrow, Dennis Healey famously declared when he won the vote to be re-elected as Labour Deputy Leader against an insurgent Tony Benn in 1981 by less than 1 percentage point after an exceptionally unpleasant, bitter campaign. Labour MP Giles Radici wrote in his diary that evening that the result was announced, "Dennis Healey has saved the Labour Party. And all for the sake of a job which I found disagreeable," Healey added in his autobiography, and which in itself was not worth having. Let's have a little listen to Dennis.
Benn supporters, who were included a very motley group, the anarchists, the Socialist Workers' Party, the International Marxist Group, militant tendency, even the positists who believed that socialism would be brought to the world by superior beings from outer space who had great technological ability, typical Bennites, I suppose. They came and howled me down at conference after conference. It made good television from a television journalist's point of view, but it turned people off the party. I fought much harder to have the meaningless job of deputy leader than the meaningful job of leader, because I thought Tony Benn would have killed the party forever if he'd won, and I think most people would share that view.
At the Liberal conference that year, the usually reserved David Steele told his delegates, "Go back to your constituencies and prepare for government." In December 1981, a Gallup poll put support for the SDP formed by the Gang of Four who had left Labour in alliance with the Liberals at 50.5%, with both Labour and Thatcher's Conservatives almost 30 points behind. The feeling was that Labour moving to the left would increase both defections and loss of support to the alliance, and that Labour would not survive this. Now, the election of Lucy Powell as Deputy Labour leader was nowhere near as close, nor as nasty a campaign. But is it possible that by electing the deputy not favoured by Starmer, Labour members have saved the party again, this time by preventing it from drifting further away from the left? Kenny, are the stakes as high today, and if not, why not?
Good question. I mean, the role of the deputy leader has now been divorced from the role of deputy PM, which potentially brings more freedoms for the incumbent, and either less, or depending on how you read the situation, more power as well, depending on how things pan out. And Lucy Powell herself...
Less influence for sure, but maybe more power.
Well, exactly that. Depending how things are going. When everything's going tickety-boo, everyone's pulling in the same direction, that's fine. It's when those inevitable splits behind the scenes happen that we start to see who actually wields the real power. The potential is there for somebody who no longer has the responsibilities of being deputy PM to behave in a different way. to be much more aggressive in their approach. Now, Lucy Powell herself, let's be clear, she's much closer politically to Starmer. She was in his cabinet until fairly recently, and she's not exactly seen as a lefty. So it's clear that the opportunities for mischief-making are somewhat reduced, especially with conference just out of the way and the next one a long 11 months away. But backbenchers have already been uneasy, and the result in Wales this week means they're going to be more uneasy. And that, I think, is going to be the key for Lucy Powell.
Let's have a little listen to what Lucy Powell had to say.
Keir, as you set out at your conference speech a few weeks ago, we are now in the fight of our lives, and we really are. Not for ourselves and our fortunes, but for the future of the country and democracy. Division and hate are on the rise, discontent and disillusionment widespread. The desire for change, impatient and palpable. People are looking around, looking elsewhere for the answers. And we, as the Labour Party, as the party of government, have to step forward and take this on. We have to offer hope, to offer the big change the country's crying out for. We must give a stronger sense of our purpose, whose side we're on, and of our Labour values and beliefs. That's what I've heard loudly and clearly around the country these last few weeks. As deputy, my job will be to bring those voices to the heart of our party. It starts with us wrestling back the political megaphone and setting the agenda more strongly. Because let's be honest, we've let Farage and his ilk run away with it. He wants to blame immigration for all the country's problems. We reject that.
All right, Alex, so genuinely, do you think it could be really a very, very good thing indeed for Labour to have a properly dissenting voice within it that also has a platform?
Yes. Not from a Labour point of view. I don't know. Labour are a weird creature, aren't they? They're internally quite oppressive as a party. They want to always give the appearance of unity, even when it's blatantly obvious that unity is in short supply, and that makes them a very weird creature. But look, from a progressive point of view, anyone who thinks, as I do, that Labour have spun in the wrong direction since their start in government has to welcome some kind of different power centre that's maybe articulating a little bit the frustrations of Labour members and Labour voters to the leadership. So yes, I think it is a good thing. Looking at the reverse, actually, it's easier to say, I think, that it would have been a disaster to have a voice that's already around the cabinet table, that already toes the line. To have that voice would add nothing to the mix.
Powell brings a whole bunch of very obvious strengths to the position. You know, she's recognised as being somebody who can connect and organise across the party. She's got those administrative skills, and she describes herself as someone who knows what it takes to rebuild the voter coalition. She's also got the stance as somewhat of a bridge builder, and she's said that her ambition is to be a full-time deputy leader and an independent voice, you know, not just a number two in the tower. And of course, she's got that non-London base, which isn't just symbolic in Labour, it's absolutely critical. So she brings a CV that even opponents would acknowledge is pretty bloody good. Do you think she's effective as a politician in the way that a Tony Benn or even an Angela Rayner has been really very effective?
I mean, the blunt answer is no. I don't think Lucy Powell could change the direction of a party with one incredible speech to conference.
No.
And I think Tony Benn could. And I think Angela Rayner probably could. So no, I don't think she's that kind of player. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think her skill set suits her more to power brokerage behind the scenes rather than taking punchy positions in public. Because remember, the Labour Party that we're talking about back then was in opposition. Now, while in opposition, it's much more reasonable to have a battle of ideas, to have a fight about the direction of the party, and then decide, coalesce around that idea and go into the next election. But when you're in government, to have devastatingly effective noises off would only add to Labour's problems right now. So I don't think she's a Tony Benn, I don't think she's an Angela Rayner, but I probably think that's a good thing.
Only this week, one of our political opponents called for a policy that says people who have settled here legally, nurses, pensioners, teachers, business owners, our neighbours, that they should be deported if they earn less than £38,000 a year, or if they claim any benefits, including the state pension. These are people settled here lawfully, our neighbours. And look, this week, it wasn't even Reform. This week, it was the Tories. And that is what we're up against on the right of politics. A politics of division and grievance that wants to take this great country to a very dark place. Our job, whoever we are in this party, is to unite every single person in this country who is opposed to that politics and defeat it once and for all.
Is there a case to be made for Starmer trying to cut his losses before they happen and sticking her in the cabinet without portfolio, for example, as the Tories do with their chair?
That's an interesting idea. Because my instinct is, as Zay Williams so brilliantly observed during the week's episode, my instinct is always, how do we find consensus? How do we work together? Perhaps wrongly. But yes, I think that would extend a hand of friendship to the soft left of the party. That would send the signal that Starmer is not threatened or concerned about a dissenting voice in the cabinet. I don't know whether having collective cabinet responsibility would hamstring her. So maybe a tense cabinet in order to represent the party's views, I guess, but is not bound by strict collective responsibility. Rather than being a member of the cabinet, a tense cabinet in her capacity as deputy leader might be quite a good compromise. I was going to say, actually, that, we're talking about Caerphilly earlier and what you can project into the future. And actually, that was about the same point of the electoral cycle in Thatcher's first term as it is in Starmer's. And if you went into predicting what was going to happen in 1983, you would get all of it wrong, right?
Yeah, by quite some margin.
Yeah, both Labour and Alliance lost the 1983 election very convincingly. And so maybe that is the real lesson from history, that polls this far away from an election are mere indications, and they should be taken seriously. I think the more we can kick Labour with the idea that, hi, Keir, we're here as well, progressive people are also part of this country and we get a vote too. The more we can make our presence felt and kind of bully the Labour Party into better positions, then that's a win, isn't it? Because Labour still have just under 4 years to go with a massive majority. So playing now for the election in 4 years' time, while making circumstances for trans people or asylum seekers markedly worse for the next 4 years, and saying, oh, well, collateral damage to our glorious revolution, it's not good enough for me. For me, the important thing is actually, does that Caerphilly by-election, will it play on Starmer's mind tomorrow when he decides when they're going to withdraw the 2-child welfare limit? That's what interests me. And so every bit of pressure we can put on Labour now to make better choices now, without worrying about the election years down the line, because plainly, if we look at the 1980s example, no one knows. I think that's the lesson. I think that's the good thing.
Quiet Riot. Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
Quiet Riot. 30 miles north of Inverness, a bunch of British celebrities have been cooped up in a really fabulous castle with the express intent of murdering one another, all in the name of charity. Of course it is. Already, names as big as Paloma Faith, Claire Balding, Tom Daly have been brutally dispatched, and even bigger names remain. I'm talking, of course, about Celebrity Traitors, which is the must-watch telly event of what's turning out to be a particularly good telly season, actually. And I say that as someone who really doesn't watch TV. Celebrity Traitors is as camp, as backstabby, and as utterly unmissable as we Traitors fans could have hoped for. And Auntie Claudia Winkleman, presenting, is playing an absolute blinder at keeping all those egos in check. Well, just about.
It's nearly time for a mission. Who here likes board games?
Board games. Oh, I love a board game.
What meanings of the word boards could she?
We could be casters, bishops, knights. We could be active chess pieces, couldn't we? Bags, I'd be a knight. Oh, I already am. Stop it!
Instead of an old queen.
Hey!
But one thing has really stood out as the episodes have passed. The celebs, certainly in the first part of the series, have been really rubbish at this game. And if you don't watch it, 3 traitors are hidden in a group of 19 famous faces, and they kill off the so-called faithful as the nights go by. What's not to like, really? It's probably fairer to say that most of the celebs have been rubbish up to this week anyway, because the 3 traitors have been playing a blinder when it comes to detection. All right, Alex, I know that you're a fan as well, and you are also somebody who doesn't watch television, probably even less than me. You are going to agree that the faithful in this show are completely incompetent when it comes to identifying the traitors. How can a group of such plainly intelligent people be acting so utterly stupidly?
First of all, there is an added element to this, which is that they're all in the same industry.
Yeah,
and so I would imagine the politics of it are more complicated because they know each other. They probably think they can read each other a bit better than they can. They probably don't want to piss off the big beasts because they might end up creating some kind of vendetta or grudge that destroys their career.
You will never appear on a Jonathan Ross show again.
Quite a thing. Anyway, so I think that's an extra layer. But the basic truth is that intelligent people frequently act stupidly. And in my experience, the more intelligent the people, the more stupidly they are capable of acting, right?
Oh, you've just explained my CV. Thank you so much.
Because I think someone who considers themselves very intelligent has a different level of confidence in their views. And in a game like this, that can really give you a bum steer. I think when Celia Imrie looks a traitor in the eye and says, I'm really quite sure you're not a traitor, I think she kind of means it. She thinks she can read people quite well. And the other element is that I think the game is complex, but actually quite simple in the choices you have to make.
Yeah.
And overthinking it can really, again, give you some very, very, very bad ideas. Too much second guessing. And we see that, right, in the way they go from day to day. So I've noticed them a number of times identifying a piece of information that is really quite useful. And then they get to the round table and they don't mention it. It's gone. They've had so many thoughts intruding in between that they don't have the ability of less intelligent people to grab hold of a bone and not let go. They end up doubting themselves, second-guessing themselves, overthinking everything, and they move from the right choice to the wrong one.
One of the things about the round table, now I don't know if this is true of the celebrity show, but it's certainly true of the main Traitor show, is that the round table sections are edited brutally. These roundtable sessions can go on for 3 hours and we get 10 minutes. So we don't know what goes on for the vast majority of the time that they're sat round that table. But we do know from people who've come off the series that sometimes it's a genuinely terrifying place to be, that round table. It's such an important show when it comes to editing. It can make such a difference in how we perceive the strengths and weaknesses of every single one of those players. And I have my suspicions that they chop all the editing up and we don't actually see what people are saying in the order that it's said as well, which is another layer of psychological torture for fans of the show.
Yeah. When we were watching Thursday's episode, which is the first time, by the way, I have watched live television in about 5 years, other than news. You know, we'll watch news or Question Time or Newsnight when it's actually on. But in terms of a scheduled program, I don't think I have tuned into the live feed of the BBC channel and waited a few minutes for the thing to start.
Broadcasters, this is the highest praise. The
For
highest
5
of
years.
high praises.
For 5 years. I actually watched the end of the previous thing waiting for Traitors to start. So we were watching the episode on Thursday night, which I know you haven't watched yet.
No, I'm saving it as a
so
Saturday night treat.
I won't spoil what happens, but I will tell you that someone does something at some point in the challenge, and they then say, right, we have to keep this an absolute secret. And my immediate thought was, if that bit made it into the edit, we have to keep this a secret. 5 minutes later, they're
Boom.
about to blab it. Because it's like, there's no other reason, dramatically speaking, to have that clip in of the person going, right, no one breathe a word about this.
In the first series of Traitors, there was a moment where one of the traitors, in front of everybody else, imitated Claudia saying, "Good evening, traitors," which was kind of a giveaway that she'd been in the room when Claudia had said, "Good evening, traitors," and not surprisingly got voted off not too long after.
Yes, there was a similar moment with Alan Carr in the episode you're about to watch. But let's see if they remember it come the next round table. Because like I said, the problem with them is that they identify really useful bits of information. You think, oh my goodness, at long last they've got it. And then comes the round table. And there was like one where the first 10 or 11 people all voted for a different person.
It was a complete, it was beyond random, wasn't it?
They had like one vote each. And it's like, what are you doing? Even the traitors, like, where is your strategy? Because it's now getting down to the levels. There's now 10 people left, and 3 of them are traitors. And so it's getting to the stage where 3 votes will be enough most nights to get someone banished.
Yeah.
And yet they're not coordinating their bloody votes between them. I know you were saying they're playing a blinder. They're not. If they got together and said, right, which of the faithfuls do we think will get a couple of votes tomorrow? Let's all vote for that person. That person is out. They're banished. That's it. You know, it's getting to the point where mathematically they could boss the rest of the game, and they're not doing it. And I don't
Up until now, though, chaos is their friend, isn't it? It's that sort of Trump approach to the world. It's like, just cover it in madness and chaos and let all the crazy things happen and keep your fingers crossed that you don't get hit in the crossfire.
Players, welcome to the worst team-building away day experience in history. What just happened?
I just farted, Claudia. I'm so sorry.
Celia.
I'm so sorry. It's nerves.
Kenny, is there anyone you've unexpectedly warmed to or unexpectedly cooled on?
Do you know what? I did not have on my 2025 bingo card Alan Carr as my hero. When I saw him appear on the first episode, I'd avoided all the pre-show publicity. I wanted it to be a big surprise. And the revealing who's going to be there, and you're going, ooh, it's Tom Daly. Ooh, it's Celia Imrie. Oh, it's bloody Alan Carr. When Claudia put her hand on Alan's shoulder to pick him as a traitor, my immediate reaction was, oh, that's that show ruined, isn't it? It's going to last 10 minutes. Instead of which, his nervous, over-the-top disposition has turned out to be utterly brilliant. And watching his personality change over the course of the first few episodes has been absolutely fascinating. I've been howling with laughter at the camera edits that capture his face. He's got a worse poker face than me.
I know, but you know, in poker they say, if you can't have no tells, have loads of them.
He's got all the tells. He's got an encyclopedia of tells between his hairline and his chin.
And people who are that kind of hysterical in their energy can be quite hard to read.
And of course, he executed one of his best friends. In the very first episode, he took out Paloma Faith.
I know.
Who he's very, very close to. So I've genuinely warmed massively to Alan Carr. Is there anybody that you've kind of warmed to, Alex?
Yeah, Charlotte Church, actually. I didn't expect I was going to like her as much as I did. And I was genuinely bereft when she left, because there are people in there who I feel truly add nothing to the mix, not naming any names. Kate.
Except when she overacts like a fiend.
She even does that in a dull way.
Meow.
but that wasn't unexpected. I thought I was going to not like her, and I didn't. But Charlotte Church, I thought I was going to dislike. I thought she was going to be really loud and overbearing, and actually she acquitted herself really brilliantly. I thought she threw herself into tasks and things with incredible gusto, and I've really, really enjoyed getting to know the adult Charlotte Church. And I feel I should sort of congratulate her, because she had quite a weird, spoiled childhood in many, many ways. And she seems to have shaken that off and become quite a rounded, solid, earthed person. And I really love to see that.
I looked forward to her speaking. She didn't get that much camera time.
What's been your favourite moment of the series so far? Do you have one moment where you had to rewind?
Do you know what? It's not one that will stick in anybody's mind, but it was at one of the round tables, and it was one of those edits that just captured Alan Carr's face doing his non-poker facial porridge. He's got a face like lasagna and a tumble dryer, just all over the place. And he's got this sweating problem as well. The man looks guilty, even if he's asleep.
That's the point. She looks guilty all the time. And I don't think I've seen anyone wear a cloak worse.
That's true.
He looks like a cartoon on the front of a Terry Pratchett novel. He really does.
They're slightly uncomfortable this year in the turret. Kat has been, she's getting called out now for being under the radar. She's been quite impressive. Rossi is playing the game, but Rossi knows how to play. And I'm amazed that he's not been booted out already.
How is that possible? But how is that possible?
One of the big dogs is gone.
You look at it and you think, how is that possible? How is it possible?
It's just too obvious.
It's what I was telling you with the round table. They keep going, it's Jonathan Ross. I think it's Jonathan Ross. Jonathan Ross is definitely a traitor. Then he gets to the round table and he gets like one vote. Although I have to say, I did not expect the fashion choices that Jonathan Ross has made.
Dear God in heaven, they're
That's
awful.
been another joy.
The thing is, in the Traitors, the one thing you don't want to do is shine the spotlight on yourself for any reason. And Jonathan Ross puts on whatever hellish concoction it will be. This week it was tartan plus fours plus, I don't know, was it a floral or a leopard print top? It was some horrible thing. I had to shield my eyes. It was so awful.
So can I tell you, I think his outfits are a cheeky joke on Claudia.
Oh.
Because I saw him one day. He came in wearing a poncho and fingerless gloves and very tight trousers and boots underneath. And I thought, that is like a carnival version or a Hall of Mirrors version of a Claudia Winkleman outfit. That's what he's doing. He's kind of taking
nailed
the
it. You've absolutely nailed it. And Jonathan Ross is a real expert. He loves this sort of stuff, but he's the accepted expert on all things Traitors. He's got probably deep knowledge. So that makes a ton of sense. Oh no, you're going to make me start liking Wossie again.
Honestly, check out the outfits next time and you will find those echoes of Claudia Winkleman and of course Alan Cumming, who does the American version and wears some outfits in that. It's all over them. Now, to wrap this up, do you think there are any political lessons to be learned from the game?
We're a political podcast. We probably should drag it back to the
We probably should.
You could read any number of political lessons in with the backstabbing and the inability to read the room and what have you, and especially the power of herd mentality. One or two people go in one direction and everybody goes charging off. If you remember back a couple of years, John Bercow, the Squeaker, the former Speaker of the House of Commons,
did the American one.
And he was on the American one, that's right. And he was a faithful, but they kicked him out after about 10 episodes. They'd seen him as a significant threat because he had the ability to sway people in discussions. His skill set actually came into play. So maybe one of the political lessons is be good, but don't be too good, because the moment you're too good at what you do, everybody starts to turn against you. They don't trust you.
That is so interesting because I think I'm on the same page as you. What I've jotted down was that the most successful traitors have a way of getting proxies to start the rumors, of getting someone else to point the finger at the person they want eliminated.
He who wields the knife never wears the crown, yes.
And that brings us to the end of another Sunday school, freeing me up to go buy some Jonathan Ross-inspired fashion accoutrements. I reckon I can carry a poncho off easy.
I do as well.
Maybe that should be part of our soon-to-be merchandise. a quiet riot poncho.
Well, while Alex is hunting down some pre-loved +4s and a leopard print leotard, you can check us out at ko-fi.com/QuietRiotPod if you fancy supporting this show. Ta very much.
We'll be back on Thursday with special guest Christina Pargle to talk. Well, let's see what happens between now and then, shall we?
See you all on Thursday. We love you lots. Bye.
Bye.
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Alex Andreu. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simona Canelu. And edited by me, Alex Reese.
Quiet Riot.
Producer Alex here. A little context for this blooper. Alex had written in the script one of the spoilers for the episode that Kenny hadn't watched. And this is Kenny reading the script and realising what had happened.
I've been playing a blinder when it comes to detection. Oh, no.
Oh, sorry. Sorry,
Oh,
Kenny.
no.
I completely forgot.
Oh, you bad man. Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's got to be the event of the season as well, isn't it?
Oh, I'm
I
so
now have
sorry,
to pitch
mate.
them. Oh my God. Okay, well, but it does
I
mean that
I hope it will increase your anticipation rather than.
I'm going
ruin
to
it
go. I'm going to go out
completely.
and buy a bottle of really good wine to watch this one. Myself and Bex were
Sorry,
saying this that they're capable of
as,
doing anything.
as we got there, I noticed it and I thought, oh fuck.